When Sergei was young, he thought of himself as a poet. One day, he suddenly had a premonition of a poem, which could be called inspiration, along with a trembling heart. The sensation eventually landed on a specific word, and the world was framed by Sergei's words. However, Sergei's poems were never published. Although they were published in the literary magazines of the university, they never actually published a collection of poems. Living alone with his mother, he could not make enough money to have a local publisher print his poems. With a state scholarship, it was a miracle that he could even go to university, and the hope of publishing a bound collection of poems and having them sold in bookstores was a misplaced hope. At university, he joined the drama club. While he worked on scripts and directing there, Sergei could not give up on poetry and continued to write. He would sometimes add his own poems to the scripts, but his reputation was neither good nor bad. When Elena joined the drama club, her presence made everyone a little uneasy. Certainly, she had beautiful features, and depending on how you look at her, her profile reminded people of a popular actress at the time. However, what everyone was more interested in was the contrast between her complete lack of interest in romance and her inability to make jokes or light-hearted remarks. Even though she was still in her teens, Elena always wore long beige skirts. It seemed a little outdated even at the time. She also didn't understand the music of her generation. She didn't know any of the popular songs that everyone knew, and surprisingly, all she liked to listen to was Bach. The reputation of the club was that if she dressed better and applied makeup well, someone would fall in love with her, but it was Sergei who fell in love with Elena, even without her consciously showing off those skills. After 2 years, Sergei and Elena had become a couple. As soon as the time for military service approached, and Sergei received his conscription notice, they mourned their separation like any other couple. They kissed in the darkness of the city and told each other that they loved each other. Like his predecessors, Sergei would have liked to take his lover to his room and possess her body before the breakup, but Elena, being the earnest one, was determined to keep that line. In the end, Sergei, being a gentleman, had no choice but to give in. In return, Elena promised to write him a letter every day. She also promised that she would think of Sergei every night before going to sleep, and that she would always wait for the day they could live together. Sergei had to convince himself with those words. In September, when the hint of winter began to mix in the air, Sergei and the other young men all put on their issued military uniforms, had their heads shaved, and were assigned to various regions. Sergei was given the job of guarding the border for 2 years. On the border was a vast expanse of bare land. It was said that in the past, a foreign tribe would attack from the northern desert, but that story was over 1,000 years ago, and now all that remained in the valley was a white painted iron fence with barbed wire blowing in the wind. That was the border. Occasionally, the sounds of target practice could be heard on the wind from the other side of the fence. At such times, Sergei and the other guards would raise their heads and turn in that direction, like silent animals. There were ruins in the area where they were stationed. While on guard duty on the grassy hill, they could see the remains of churches and houses, many of which were still half buried underground and had not yet been excavated. When it snowed and the entire hill was covered in white, a single reddish-brown tough rock stood out in one place, and it was the dome of a church built in about the 7th century AD. Although he had been warned to be careful of snakes, Sergei would visit the ruins several times in the spring during his free time between training and patrols, and gaze at the mural of an angel painted on the wall of the collapsed dome. The angel's face somehow reminded Elena, so he wrote her about it in a letter. It was a poetic and sentimental letter, but he thought that his feelings would reach her too. Elena's replies were not as frequent as Sergei's, which he found unsatisfying, but Sergei continued to send her letters whenever he had time. After 2 long years, when Sergei returned from military service, Elena told him that she had something to talk about again. Thinking that it must be a marriage consultation, Sergei dressed up and headed to a restaurant. However, it was a marriage, but Elena was marrying another man. "I never heard of such a relationship between our parents," Sergei said. "I don't have any obligation to tell you about that," Elena said, looking confused. That was something that had changed in the past 2 years. And he's a foreigner, too. That's crazy. Do you know what you're doing? Don't do that, Elena said. You're not the type to say things like that. You're the one who's changed, Sergei said. The conversation had just started in the middle of the meal, but Sergei got up, paid for himself and her, and ran out of the restaurant. One day the world changes. At the time, Sergei had been offered a job at a shipbuilding company through his uncle, but as soon as he got home he called his uncle and turned it down. The next day he was already in the process of joining the army. You're making the right choice, his superior officer said when he enlisted. After all, it's safest to return to your motherland. What other right way of life is there? Initially, Sergei wanted to be a border patrolman. He just wanted to get out of the city. However, the department to which Sergei was assigned was the intelligence unit in the capital. The military was in a situation where it was necessary to respond to new developments. If not immediately, the military authorities believed that if the tensions with the neighboring country to the west continued, something would happen eventually. What was needed at that time was a well-trained, practical young intelligence officer. By chance, Sergei's superior officer at the time of enlistment was connected to the intelligence unit. Sergei had only intended to serve in the military for a few years, but this superior officer discovered his talent. Sergei's features were quite ordinary, which was a good thing in this case. He didn't stand out, and he wasn't easily remembered. In addition, Sergei was good with words, which was rare for someone in the military. One day, the superior officer gave Sergei a special task. It was monotonous and unreasonable, and to those who didn't know anything about it, it looked like Sergei had made a big mistake and was being punished for it. It was an unofficial test. Sergei completed the job for 3 months without complaining. In reality, Sergei was just thinking about Elena and despairing about his life, but to his superiors, Sergei's work looked like strong self-control and loyalty to the military. One day, the superior called Sergei into his office and said, "You will be reassigned from next week." Before he knew it, Sergei had been working as an intelligence officer for 14 years. It was only when people around him pointed out that next year would be his 15th year as an intelligence officer that he finally realized it. To the outsider's eyes, he was steadily climbing the ranks in the military. He already had many subordinates, and Sergei, who was in his 20s when he joined the army, had become quite dignified in his 40s. During that long period, there were many skirmishes with the neighboring country to the west, and with each death, the possibility of war gradually became more and more real. In contrast to the excited voices calling for war rising within the country, supplies were beginning to run short. Eggs bought yesterday cost twice as much today. Items began to disappear from the shelves, and substitutes and soldiers began to dominate. Nowadays, only the rich and military were allowed to drive large vehicles in the city. A military vehicle stopped on the corner of the street. The driver, a young man with a red, swollen pimple on his chin, briskly got out of the driver's seat and opened the car door. Soon, Sergei got out with difficulty. His superior officer got out next, and the two of them went down the stairs to the basement. The dull blue door opened and the owner appeared. For a moment, light filtered in from inside the store, reflecting the men's shadows on the ground, but the door quickly closed. As soon as they sat down on the maroon sofa, the dance began on the stage. After a series of greetings and orders, the officer sat back on the sofa and waited for Sergei and him to be alone. Then the officer said, "There will be a big war soon. Of course, we must defend the border." "I guess so," Sergei said. "Oh, aren't you worried?" "Yes, I am," Sergei said. "Yes. Our land, our culture, will be taken over by those guys. Those barbarians. You must have a family, too." "Yes, your wife. She must be related to the M family." "Yes, yes," Sergei replied with a wry smile. When talking about Sergei's wife, everyone mentioned her family background. It was certainly a family that could be considered upper class, but the truth was that there was nothing else to praise about her. "What do you need?" Sergei asked. This restaurant had also changed without anyone noticing. It used to be a social gathering place for the best people, but the women were tired and their makeup was sloppy. Still, they danced on stage because it was their job. When the song ended, the officer next to them applauded while holding a cigarette in his mouth. The women smiled happily. It seemed like they were all performing the same act. "What can I do?" Sergei asked again, as there was no reply. "There are spies among the civilians now. They are trying to help the other side under the guise of unofficial collaborators. They are really terrible people. They sneak around unseen and multiply like cockroaches. We have to do something about them first." After the dance, the women left, and instead a band appeared. The pianist sat down and began to play a joyous South American piece, and Sergei stood up. "Aren't you going to listen?" "I don't like music," Sergei said. "I hate it." The secret police do many things. They prepare wiretaps to investigate the behavior of their targets. If the person under investigation has influence, they look for slip-ups to destroy their image. At the same time, they create and increase the number of people who can provide information. This is because an organization of informants is a safe line of defense for the country. Sergei preferred wiretaps as a method. He didn't install wiretaps in private hotel rooms. Rather than in closed rooms, it was more likely to find the target's living space and wait in public facilities there. In the dining room, library, or swimming pool, people trust others and reveal their true feelings in unexpected places. Sergei knew this well from his many years of work. Sergei moved around unseen, gathered information, and made a list of targets. "Can I be involved in the interrogation?" When he saw list number 554, Sergei asked his superior. "Of course," the superior laughed. "I thought you hated that." The music teacher was thin. This made his eyes look larger, and he looked more resigned and tired than he actually was. When he saw Sergei approaching, his face brightened for a moment, but his wary expression soon returned. He looked like he'd already been detained, Sergei thought, as he sat down opposite him. "Nice to meet you," Sergei said. "This is your third interrogation? It's long. It's difficult. Oh, you don't have to stand up. There's no need to shake hands. I don't like formalities." As he spoke, Sergei tried to control his emotions. He spoke more slowly than necessary. He confirmed the music teacher's name, and then the names of his wife and child. "Your wife, Elena, and your child's name is Anatoly. Your wife is from N City? What a coincidence. I'm from N too. Isn't that canal beautiful?" That canal was a wheat transport station, and later a power station was built. Have you seen the water wheel monument in front of the station? It's the symbol of the city. All the children go on field trips at school, and they are taught to sing it. Sergei hums a song called My Town, My River in a playful tone. I know it, says the music teacher. My wife taught me that. I never forget the melodies I'm taught. Well, I wouldn't say I forget them. It's like a special skill. Sergei doesn't miss the glimpse of hope on the music teacher's face. He mutters something more, as if he wants to talk to Sergei more, but Sergei ignores him and returns to his subordinates in the corner of the room. First of all, break his right hand. Yes, his middle finger and index finger. What? Before you ask him questions? Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to find out if he's a spy. I'm trying to get him to tell me what he's hiding. The subordinate obeyed. By the time Sergei returned to face the music teacher, his fingers were twisted in a strange direction on the desk. He turned to face Sergei, enduring the pain, as if to say that there was some mistake. Sergei pursed his lips and shrugged his shoulders. Then he looked down at the music teacher. Paul Wittgenstein is a left-handed pianist, Sergei said. You'll be fine too. If you answer my questions here, I won't take your left hand away. Maybe. The child delivered a piece of music he composed for his father's birthday. It was a short piano piece of just over a minute, and the name of the hockey player his father supported was written on the sheet music. Sergei says that the title, the melody, Everything might be a code to disguise the child. Hearing this, the superior officer laughs wryly. Sergei laughs too. Well, you'll find out eventually. In his study, Sergei had a short dream. Elena was playing the piano, and Sergei was quietly listening to her. The melody was simple, but bright and beautiful like sunlight. Sergei started to listen to it, but the song ended as soon as he started, leaving him unsatisfied. "It's an angelic tune," he says. "It's just what I wanted." A knock on the door woke Sergei up. Two soldiers came in, whispered something to Sergei, and took a drawer out of their bag and handed it to him. Once alone in his study again, Sergei picked up the drawer and looked at it. It was about the size of a jam jar, and had a label on the front. The label had the name, age, and collection location written in handwriting. These were samples of the subject's scent. By having military dogs sniff them, their location could be tracked no matter where they ran off to. As instructed by Sergei, there were 2 handkerchiefs in the bottle. Sergei took one out and gently placed it against his nose. There was no way that the perfume she was using hadn't changed, but the familiar scent of Elena was just as he remembered it. For many years, he had imagined that Elena would change her mind and come back to him. Before he knew it, more than 20 years had passed. And as he smelled that scent, he realized that they had come too far apart to start over with a blank slate. Sergei felt all of the strength leave his body. He wanted to tell someone how he felt. He wanted someone to accept these feelings that he was feeling a bit overwhelmed, but that person never appeared in his life. In his younger days, he would have surely written a poem about the profile that life had given him at this moment, cutting it into words. But what he did was take out the report from a drawer. Administrative Bureau, 20th Division 5, November 23, C1/34556. Plan for the implementation of an operation on citizens hostile to the state and negative towards it. Griedfeld, born May 7, 1925, code name, Brahms. The above individual has an antagonistic attitude towards his own state and holds ideas that are fundamentally alien to the development of our country. The plan is being implemented on suspicion of violation of Articles 100 and 106 of the Criminal Code. He picked up the last of the 5 pages of the report and reread it. To cause trouble within the Brahms family. Is it possible to use Comrade Hesse and his wife Helena to bring about the fact that Brahms' wife Clara is sleeping with a certain man and asking for money from his family? Get Clara to provide information on negative citizens, and then convey this new fact to Brahms. Person in charge, Section Chief of the 20th Section, Lieutenant Colonel Comrade Sergei K. Sergei put the final report next to his desk and retyped it with all the parts related to Clara deleted. Then he added the following at the end. As for Brahms, no signs of national hostility have been confirmed at this time. The operation will be temporarily suspended. At that moment, the church on the hill above the city rang its bells. It was exactly noon. Sergei put the report in an envelope and leaned back in his chair. With the envelope in his hand, Sergei left his office. The time for his meeting with his superior officer was approaching. When he got into the car that was already waiting for him on the street, he was leaning back in his seat, deep in thought, with a bitter look on his face as usual. He didn't even notice that the driver was driving on a different route than usual. What's more, when the agony-stricken driver asked to stop the car once, he allowed it without question. He didn't even suspect that he had left the door open when he left. When the driver got out of the car, leaving Sergei behind, 3 men suddenly appeared on the sidewalk and threw modified grenades into the car. One failed to explode, but the other 2 destroyed Sergei's car, including its roof, and severely damaged the body. Sergei was already unconscious by that time, but one of the remaining men shot him in the head with a submachine gun as he lay face down. It was an untimely end. Sergei's death was reported in the newspaper.